Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're talking about the best value games in my personal board game collection. I, like most people, am preparing for a bit of travel over this holiday season. And when you're traveling, you have to make some hard determinations. That, abstract pile of board games that one day you will play sitting delicately tucked on the floor certainly can't come along. You haven't read the rule book, you haven't even unboxed half of them, and no one in your household is going to want to sit and learn them with you. That's part of the reason why they haven't been played already. The respectable, but still unplayed Shelf of Shame also probably shouldn't be brought with you. Maybe one or two of them fit, and maybe someone, a distant family member, a 6-year-old nephew or a 82-year-old uncle, maybe one of them knows how to play one of those games on your Shelf of Shame, but then you really have to make a hard determination. What's coming off? What's being tucked inside that '09 Kia Rio with 300,000 plus miles on it and driving 5 or 6 hours to your grandmother's house that will actually be worth not only the gas, airfare, and space, but also not make you look a fool when you unpack 10 or 15 games from your car and only get to play 2 of them before bringing them home. The Shelf of Shame never quite feels the same when a game has traveled with you from stop to stop and location to location. It adds a little bit of judgment to the pile. So when you're thinking about what games you're bringing with you to family holidays, what games you typically get out and set down on the table when friends come over for a Sunday afternoon dinner, there's a select pile of games. And this pile are the games that have provided the most value for me, for you, in your board game collection. Now, value can be determined in a number of ways, right? Fun and experience is part of the value. You pay more for a ticket to an amusement park than you do to a parking lot at your local Denny's. Not that you can't have fun at your local Denny's, it's just not the kind of same fun that you have going 80 miles an hour up and down twists and turns and eating a corn dog. Value is not only experience, though. It also has to be contrasted with time spent, how many plays, the general price point, how often has that divided? I mean, there are some games that are a couple dollars per play. There's some that are tens or hundreds per play. And you got to factor that in. You got to weigh not only the value of the experience, but also the price and the number of times you can get it out and get it to the table. And then the last category you have to consider is its staying power. Is this thing still earning its place in your collection? Now, value doesn't mean that it has to stay forever. But if it's one of those games that is one of the best value games in your board game collection, the odds are is that it continues to earn its keep. Keeps paying down that cost, the rental space you have in your 6x4 Calyx shelf that's tucked delicately to the side and is slowly losing space to baby toys and your wife's sock drawer that is prepared for the winter. Now, sock drawers may be a little bit of a loose term. I more mean a basket of things that keep you warm over a certain season, the holiday season specifically, all tucked by yourself into a mesh basket so that they're not scattered across the top rack of every single shelf, desk, and dresser possible throughout the house, and ready for her to start digging through and utilizing as her digits become cold. I don't know if you have the same experience that I do, but that does take up space on my board game shelf, and I do think it's a worthwhile addition. I'd much rather have my counter space uncluttered than a little bit more room for a game that I'm already not playing. So, the best value games in my collection. I know I've rambled, I've preambled, I've done what Quackalope does. I've quacked quite a bit getting to this point. I will try to go quickly through this list, and I will have links in the top of the video description to every single one of these games that I am able to. And if you follow those links over when you make a purchase or when you're looking for something to add to your collection, you'll be doing it and supporting the channel at the same time. So please be mindful if you're buying any of these, all of which I highly recommend. Follow the link in the video description to go make your purchase. Doesn't take any effort beyond that to support the channel here. I have 4 honorable mentions. And I never know if honorable mentions should be made at the beginning or end of the video, so I'll do 2 at the beginning, I'll do 2 at the end. They're games that really, I think, have a strong argument to be in this list, to be in this area, this category. And yet, for very specific reasons, very particular reasons, they, unlike some others, are not. My start is going to be a lovely box of Catan. Now, I don't actually own a base box of Catan. I should own a base box of Catan. What I own and have owned for a long time is a Game of Thrones Catan, which still needs to be opened up. I think at this point it's probably a collector's item, but it's not on this list because while Catan has been one of the more valuable games in my experience, it's not one of the more valuable games in my collection, very specifically because most of the people that I get at the table with happen to be friends, family, and acquaintances that own a copy themselves. And for those people, it's usually their walkthrough into the board game space. It's usually their entry gate into the hobby. For my family, it's one of the more ruthless games we play every year. And I have a blast every time. If I had it in my collection, it certainly would be a contender in this list. But since I rely on other people owning it, I can't claim that the unopened Game of Thrones edition is one that should be front and center here. My next edition is going to be one of those games that, earns its place in my collection by just one play. Now remember, I said experience has to be contrasted with the price point, has to be contrasted with how it's earning its space on your shelf. I don't think it earns its space very well. This is a massive game, requires a lot of time to teach. Twilight Imperium is one of those epic, play once a year, and it has earned its space not only in your dreams, your memory, but also your collection and your heart. If, over this holiday season or over a scheduled weekend break, if I would play this only but once a year, it would be worth every penny I spent on it. And I can prove this to you with one simple analogy. This is, I believe, the second, possibly the third core box of Twilight Imperium I have owned, because every time I've wanted to play it, it has been worth it for me to go pick up a copy. I first gave away a full playmat and a full copy of this to one of my friends who I played with quite often. I think the next copy also might have left with a friend if this is the third, and if not, this is the second copy right here, and we had a lovely game a couple years ago at PAX Unplugged. Twilight Imperium, one of those games that's worth a $100 ticket, but you have to be able to play it, which is why it simply can't be on this list. It argues for itself. It holds its value. It is one of the best experiences I've ever had playing a game. And yet, every time I play it, I am with a new group of people. I am purchasing a new copy of it, and oftentimes I'm giving it away on the back end because I just don't get this to the table on its own. It's just too big. It's just a little bit or a lot too much. So let's start working our way through this list. I'm going to start with some of the more accessible, easier games that we have. We're going to scale up as we go, and like we said, we have 2 more honorable mentions there at the very end. Starting with 2 lovely small box party-style games. These are games that I am going to be bringing back to my family. These are games that are easy to teach and just a blast to play across the board. Now, my friend Westy has a lot of these type of games, and there's so many that I now want to add to my collection after a gaming weekend, an excursion. But these are the 2 that I currently own. Cockroach Poker is a lovely little lying, bluffing, and betrayal game where there's only one loser, the person who collects all of the cards, cockroaches, and other creatures in front of them. Everyone else is going to be winning, and they're going to be having a great time. I've probably got a better value for my dollar on this game than any other game in this collection, just by sheer number of plays. Probably like a penny a play at this point. It's fantastic. Flip 7. Flip 7 is a lovely little pressure luck game where you're doing your best to keep the dealer handing you cards and deciding when you want to score. You don't want to get doubles, but you do want to score as many points as possible. And the way you do it is by, come on, hit me. Add another card, add another card, add another card. Numbers range from, I believe, 1 to 12, and you want to get a full set, a 7 in a row, a complete master key in front of you. But if you catch a double, if you end up getting dealt an additional card, one card too many, you will bust and score no points for that round. It's a competition, a pressure luck game, a fun little bluffing game, and a fun little tricking yourself into thinking you can take that additional risk game. Both of these quite lovely. Both of these play very, very high. Both of these are fantastic to sit around a table and enjoy with your family. I then have two lovely little roll and write or flip and write style games. We have Cartographers, the most wonderful artistic game I've ever played. Not that you have to be an artist, but it is a fun, peaceful, meditative little sketch your forestscape and your mountains and your villages out on this grid in front of you. And we have Railroad Inc., my favorite and Shira and my favorite date game, period. This is a little route building game where you're going to be scoring based on how effectively and efficiently you can create your route around the whiteboard that you're drawing. You're going to be rolling some dice. They'll create maps or create little segments of maps you have to place into your tableau, into your little picture, and then you'll score at the end of the game based on how well you did that. Cartographers is going to be very similar. You're going to be flipping cards. They'll reveal mountainscapes, landscapes, and you'll all have scoring objectives you're trying to meet and accomplish. In Cartographers, you'll be adding those. You'll be sketching those into a little notepad, and you'll be trying to get adjacency bonuses as much as possible. I want my lake on the side of the map. I want my forests in one big region through the center. I want castle keeps dotted around and villages that are scoring and covering the outside little mountain spires. I don't know exactly what it is or how to describe it, but both of these add a ton of variability. Both of these can be played from moderate to higher player counts. I believe they both can be played solo as well if you just want a peaceful little game by yourself. But they are wonderful games. I get this one to the table almost every time I am going out with my wife to grab some food, to sit and hang out together. It is quite lovely, and honestly actually hasn't been played for the last year given the fact that we have a 15-month-old, but we do have fond memories and we have plenty of plays in our history to allow it to earn its keep and set its mark on this list. And Cartographers is one of those games that I'm excited to get out and onto the table every single time I come across it. I think about it, and I find new victims to dominate because I am both a wonderful artist and have a hyperactive visual brain memory system that allows me to doodle well. Lovely little two-player game that we dipped our toes into repeatedly, and I love coming back to. This is Caesar. This is a very competitive, very quick, very well-playing, head-to-head two-player. You can play this solo, but that's not where I recommend it. This is just one of those games that you bring back. You can teach one of your family or friends so efficiently, and I guarantee they will be asking you to sit down and play over and over and over and over again. It is so good. You're going to be drawing from a little blind bag. You're going to have a set of chits in front of you, little pieces that you can then add to the board, and all you're trying to do is kind of have a bluffing match, a back and forth tit for tat. I'm taking this region while you take this other region. We are trying to conquer the landscape of Rome to become the Caesar ourselves. This is a lovely little tactical skirmish, war feeling like game. Plays very quick, plays very efficiently, teaches very, very easily, and the reason it's on this list, why it has its mark here, you're not just going to play it once. You're going to play it, and you're going to play it again, then you're going to play it again. You're going to keep thinking of new strategies and ways that you want to approach it, and the person that you teach it to or the people that you've taught it to are going to have this little mini competition that spikes up where they're all doing their best to battle one another for the throne. The next lightest game we have on our list is one that never would have been on this list. If you asked me when I first played it, I don't like the title at all. I love birds. This is a bird-based YouTube channel. This is the most aggressive, most assertive, most confident bird-based board game channel in all of the YouTube sphere, and yet Finspan is here. It is fun. It is teachable. It plays so rapidly and so fast, and when Shira and I first played it, we then cascaded into a dozen or more plays over the next week or two. I could teach this to any of my family members, and I think they'd have a good time playing it. I do wish it was bird-themed, but it is simpler, more accessible, and in some ways a more elegant design than base game Wormspan. And don't even ask me about Wormspan, the dragon-based one. That one I think is complicated and not worth the time to puzzle out. But Finspan is here. Do I want expansions for it? Do I want some cards that mix things up? Am I ready to move on to another level of play? Yes, that's the truth. If nothing comes out for it for the next 12 months, it's probably back off this list. But yeah, I mean, for this season, for the last few months, it has earned its spot here and has done so proudly. And if it leaves the collection in 12 months because there's no expansions to mix up my gameplay, it's probably going over to a friend or family members who's learned and played it with me, because it's a good game. It's an approachable game. It's a game that I'm happy to play again. And it'll be leaving the collection still having been one of the best value games in it, even if it doesn't stick around forever. Okay, now we have 3 heavier games, and we have the grand champion, the coup de grace, the finale that we need to talk about. These 3 games are bigger, I will admit that, but I do think they need to be here. Root is one of those legacy games, one of those games that defines a game group, has defined a long history of this channel, and has certainly defined my collection. I now own 2 copies of this and just got done doing a rapid-fire session of multiple gameplays with the group that came up and hung out with me this last week. I'm not bringing this home for the holidays, and solely because I don't already have someone prepared to play it, and we have more kids, little ones, than we have adults ready to sit and learn. However, I do wish I was bringing it home for the holidays, because this game is one of those that adds infinite variability, replayability, depending on the player group, the player count, what mix and match of factions you decide to add into the table. The experience of Root is one of those that never grows stale. I am excited for the new expansions to come out. I'm excited to continue diving into this weird abomination this channel is working on at the moment, and if I had anyone willing and ready to play Root, even 2-player, or a little bit of space where I could set up and leave it by itself playing solo, it would be one of those games that needed to come with me everywhere I traveled. My grandma's house is a little smaller. It doesn't have a dedicated board game table, does have multiple tables that will all be used for lunch and not for board gaming, so Root doesn't have a spot to live, but it does have a spot in my collection permanently. Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. Another heavier game, another puzzler, but one that replicates the feeling of a larger game in such a satisfying way that it's just an amazing value for the dollar. If you love Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition is going to scratch that itch. If you want to travel with something smaller, lighter, a little bit more teachable, Ares Expedition is going to scratch that itch. If you want a tableau builder, a resource generator, a puzzler that feels beautiful and exciting, that doesn't take too much space on the table and can be taught fairly easily and fairly readily to most people who know a bit about board gaming, it's a couple steps, maybe 2 steps, 2 gentle steps beyond Catan. Any of those family members, if willing to sit and listen, would be able to get this up and running efficiently. Ares Expedition is just an elegant little time capsule of a beautiful, giant, big box board game tucked into a little pocket that you can carry around and stick an elf and a shelf inside for you to, I don't know, discover and play with. I lost the analogy there with the elf and the shelf. I don't really know why you'd put it inside the box. It kind of defeats the whole point of the shelf. But I suppose if you have kids that are being naughty and they've been winning a lot, you could put it in here so that when you lift the box off, like the lid off to play, he judges them silently and tells them to be good little boys and girls and to let your parents win board games more often. I'm not sure. I think that stands, though. I think I'll hold by that. This is great. This is likely coming back with me. Where Root is a little bit too chaotic, requires a little bit of foreknowledge to really get the best experience from. Terraforming Mars is one of those that I could play by myself. I could play with my wife, and she loves Terraforming Mars across the board. And I think I could teach to a couple people for a single night of gaming. Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, one of the best value games in my collection by far. Age of Steam. Age of Steam is rapidly becoming, if not already, Shira's second favorite game. I'm not quite sure where it stands. It is going up against Kingdom Death, and it has a steep hill to climb, but this is the game that she asks for every time she gets asked what she would like to play. And the sheer amount of beautiful, both player count and map and scenario variability in Age of Steam makes this a game that deserves its own convention. And Age of Steam, in fact, has its own convention. So many people have determined that this is the best value game in their collection that they have designed more stuff for it, added value on top of value, and created a gaming harbor, a little island just for themselves called SteamCon, where they sit down and play giant maps that span multiple tables, large, big old 8, 9, 10 player games. I don't know if that actually happens. I assume it does, though, because everything's possible in this beautiful game. This is a route building game, a delivery-based game. This is a game where you're doing your best to earn your first dollar and not go bankrupt while doing it. It is not quite as complicated as train games, the 18xx marketplace, the area where bankruptcy is just part of the route towards discovery. Age of Steam is not so cruel. It's not so hard, and it is so tactically and designed so brilliantly that it is one of those games that just never seems to run out of steam, I suppose. It never seems to run out of its argument for why it is and should continue to be in the collection. If you like tactical, thinky little games, if you don't mind route building, like puzzly little maps that you're trying to spread out on the table before you. In fact, if that sounds like a fun mechanic to you, something that you've enjoyed in the past, if you're coming from, I don't want to compare it to Ticket to Ride, but Ticket to Ride is a route building style game. Age of Steam is the coup de grace. It is the best in that category, and there is such a dedicated community there that, you can always justify adding it to the collection, grabbing an expansion or two, get the acrylic tiles. They're well worth the investment. Buy some poker chips to make it really feel like you're gambling with not only your father's fortune, but also Detroit's lack of bankruptcy, or Detroit's bankruptcy, and hop on in and get a couple plays. We're not bringing this home for the families, mostly because I don't want to damage it on the way, but it's just one of the best games. Finally, one of the things that I am probably going to argue to myself that I should and will be bringing home to the holidays is Crokinole. Crokinole is one of those dexterity games. It's a flicking game. It is the defined game, the cornhole of Canada, since they can't go outside because I believe it's mostly a frozen wasteland up north. This is the game to define games when it comes to dexterity, when it comes to sitting around and having a drink and making good laughs and having a conversation. It is fun to watch. It is fun to play. It can play anywhere from 1, 2, 3, and 4 player counts. You can rotate people. You can shuffle people in and out. This is just a beautiful game. It's all about targeting. It's all about aiming and getting your discs into this center area, catching 20s there in the middle, getting 15s on the outer edge, 5s and 10s to follow. You're aiming for a high score. You're aiming like Crokinole or like Cornhole to walk away with X number of points, and you just keep flicking discs back and forth until you win. I think if I bring this home, I don't need to bring any of the other games that I mentioned on this list home, which is why it's here. Now, the only respectable place to buy a Crokinole board is Tracy Crokinole Boards. Is Tracy Games? Tracy is just Tracy. It's a Tracy Crokinole board. They are the best in the industry, and the best in the industry is not a small comparison. It is the difference between driving my '09 Kia Rio with 320,000 miles on it as the transmission is going out versus driving a souped-up Lamborghini or a beautiful Tesla Cybertruck that's just going on its own, smooth as butter, able to take off in a single bound. This is a bird. This is a plane. This is Superman of the Crokinole world, and Crokinole is the Superman of the board game world. I am going to be bringing a number of games home. I'm going to be bringing Flip 7, Cockroach Poker, Cartographers, Railroad Inc., Caesar, Terraforming Mars, and hopefully, if I can squeeze it in, or make sure I leave some things back, hey, maybe I'll not bring a turkey, or I'll abandon some of my own personal clothing. I'm going to be bringing this with me. And I think it's going to get played more than any of them, and longer than any of them. And it's going to have more laughs and more time spent bonding and sharing and creating memories than any of the other games. The other games are icing on the cake. They're bonus pieces. Crokinole is just kind of where it's at. The next and last honorable mentions we have, and then I think I've finished the video. Dune Imperium, or Dune Imperium Uprising. I left this off because it takes up a big footprint. It is a heavier game, and with Root and Terraforming Mars already on the list, I didn't feel like I needed to add another additional heavy game to this best value board games list, but it really has been one of the most played over the last year. For a heavier gaming group, it certainly is maintaining and continuing to add to the conversation of value. It is one of the more valuable board games I own. However, I don't think it beats out Ares Expedition, and I don't think it beats out Root. Root is just a little bit more open. Experience is a little bit more wild, and the number of plays I have in it is a little bit higher. And Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition takes what is a game that we love and puts it down into a small box. Gives you a little tuck and allows you to play it quicker, faster, more efficiently, and in more places. Dune doesn't do that. It's incredible, but just didn't quite make it past the curtain call. And then finally, a game that my friend Dennis says he introduces nearly every single new board gamer to the board game world through, Foundations of Rome. A lovely polyomino, place down into the map in front of you, score based on what you're adjacent to type of board game. It's just a little bit too big. A game this size really has to earn its keep, and in some collections it does, and in some collections certainly it would be on this list. For myself, it's right on the edge of it. If it was a little more tucked, a little bit more, a little bit smaller, if it had some liposuction and maybe a rhinoplasty earlier this year, I could see it being here in this list video. But for me, the size, an entire Calyx cube, is the whole space that these 4 board games take up on their own. So it just didn't quite make it on the list. And I know there is a, standalone additional version of it with cardboard tiles instead of the beautiful miniatures that lay out the map, but it's in a modern era, so Foundations Metropolis is not quite the theme I'm looking for, but more importantly than that, they leave off an expansion or two that's included in the core game here, and I want all of that mess. I want the monuments, and I want the buying, trading, and stealing, and I want the player abilities that you can add in, and so smaller box is also a smaller experience, which, again, makes the value not quite as significant. Whereas, I'll point once more to Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, the smaller box here is still a robust and not in any way smaller experience. Different, yes. Tighter, more compact, certainly. All things that I wish Foundations would do. But its size is part of what makes it such a draw and such a pleasure to play. So it's not on this list, but it certainly could be, and it's certainly in the conversation. There you have it. I probably rambled on much longer than I needed to, but, what are you going to do? Are you going to not talk about these lovely games? You're not going to share them with people? You're going to leave a few of these beasts off the list? I don't think so. If you're making a list video and you're titling it top 10, you got to include 14. We all know that's the way this works. And so I would love to hear from you. What are the board games in your collection that have provided the best value for the dollar? What have provided the most plays, the best experience despite the price point, and are earning or justifying the space that they take up in your house, on your table, on the shelf sitting behind you? Which games really put that shelf of shame to shame? Which games make that, abandoned pile of lost and forgotten dreams feel just a touch lonelier and a little bit more distant from actually ever making it to the table? Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Whatever the case, though, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. Specifically, with some new people, with your family. Get the classics to the table or buy a crokinole board to share. Possibly bring a copy of Root if you have a friend that knows how. But get some games played this holiday season. Have some laughs. Share some time. Put the phones away. And we'll see you soon. Bye.